Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is me looking at the recent donations, or promised donations, by the SNP Scottish Government of £12.5 million for education in Africa. So, that's right, Scottish Government's £12.5 million African Education Initiative has been launched amidst some domestic educational cuts in an era where the allocation of public funds becomes increasingly scrutinised. The recent decision by the Scottish Government to pledge £12.5 million for education initiatives in 3 African countries has sparked a bit of debate within Scotland. The initiative aimed at enhancing educational access for disabled children and women, while they're supporting female education in Malawi, Rwanda and Zambia, comes at a time when Scotland's education sector is facing significant budgetary constraints. So the initiative's aims, the funding part of Scotland's commitment to international development, targets some of the most marginalised groups in these African nations. John Swinney, in discussions with representatives from these countries, emphasised the importance of education and the fundamental right, echoing the principles of global citizenship and solidarity, which is nice. The projects involve improving access to quality education for girls and children with disabilities, aligning with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm quite happy for John, who's bolting in yet again to something that the UN have decided is a global problem. However, we see some domestic educational challenges. Contrastingly, within Scotland, education is grappling with its own series of crises. Budget cuts. Glasgow City Council, among others, has announced plans to cut around 400 teaching positions over the next 3 years. This decision reflects broader financial constraints imposed by budget cuts, which many argue are impacting the quality of education. We get university funding. There's also been real-term reduction in funding for Scottish students attending universities. This has led to concerns over access to higher education, particularly from those from less affluent backgrounds who might now face greater financial barriers. What's happened in Scotland is we've got this big push for free further education, which sounds like a noble idea. However, when you actually drill down and you look, all that's happened is we now restrict the number of Scottish students that go to our own universities because it would cost too much money to send everybody. So now Scottish universities are relying on external foreign students to keep them open, because the Scottish Government have said everybody goes free, not means tested like it used to be, and we'll pay for it. But obviously there's a maximum cap on the amount of money they can throw at this, so therefore places are not endless. So we've also got public sentiment. The reaction in platforms like X has been pretty vicious. Many Scots are questioning the rationale behind sending millions overseas when a local education system is witnessing job losses and reduced educational opportunities. The sentiment captured from discussions on X reveals a common thread of frustration. You've got perceived misallocation. Critics argue that while international aid is essential, prioritisation should be and should start at home, especially when education, the purported focus of this initiative, is suffering domestically. You've got political motive. There's a suspicion among some that such gestures are more about political posturing or adhering to an ideology, to internationalism, rather than calculated decision based on what's best for Scotland. We've also got economic and social impact. The reduction in education funding at home could lead to long-term economic disadvantages, with reduced teacher numbers potentially affecting educational quality, and less funding for university students, narrowing the social mobility. So when you analyse this decision, the debate encapsulates several broader issues: global versus local responsibility. While Scotland's international aid reflects a commitment to global equality or equity, when you put together the domestic cuts, raises questions about where the nation's primary responsibilities lie. You've got political strategy. Some view this, the nation, as part of the SNP's strategy to project Scotland's international standing, potentially at the cost of domestic satisfaction and welfare. You've got economical considerations. Economically, investing in education globally could be seen as part of a soft power or long-term development aid benefits, but this long-term gain is hard to reconcile with immediate local needs. So in conclusion, the Scottish Government's £12.5 million pledge to African education has ignited a debate over priorities, responsibility and the essence of governance. While the initiative itself might be laudable in the context of international development, the timing and the backdrop of domestic education cuts paints a picture of conflicting priorities. This scenario not only highlights the complex nature of public funding decisions, but also underscores the ongoing tensions between global solidarity and local welfare. Scotland's education future, both at home and abroad, hangs in the balance of these decisions, reflecting a broader narrative on how governments navigate the tightrope of international goodwill against domestic needs. And it just makes you ask why. Scotland has got devolved powers, where foreign relations is protected by Westminster. The Scottish Government do have 3 pots of money that they can use for aid in the rest of the world. We have a £10 million per year pot, which is for International Development Fund, which lists some of the countries that we have here in Africa as recipients of that money to help develop their industries and international relationships. We have a £5 million fund, which is there for a £1 million fund, which is there for humanitarian aid, which this isn't there. But in total, Scotland has the ability to give away £16 million per year out of 3 pots, a 10, a 5 and a £1 million per annum. But I don't think we need to give it away. These are devolved powers, so it's a devolved allocated money. Suppose if you didn't want to spend it all, you wouldn't need to spend it all. Or are we going to start blaming Westminster for forcing us to spend money again? But each passing day, it just becomes more and more evident that the Scottish Government are not actually there in their own eyes to do what's best for the Scottish people. Because to do what would be best for the Scottish people would be to divert those funds into their own education system, which is vastly suffering just now. And the fact that somewhere like Glasgow, where we see big demands on education, we see the numbers are going to be cut quite dramatically over the next 3 years, and that's purely down to the economic strains on Glasgow City Council and in turn their education department. So when your kids at school in Glasgow and the room sizes are increasing and the quality delivered is decreasing, and you see headlines of £12.5 million for education in African countries, you can imagine and understand why these people would be frustrated and feel let down by their own government. As I do, and I do often. But this is just another one of those examples of they don't care. They don't read the room. They don't listen to people. Remember when they failed miserably at the Westminster elections in July, the SNP vowed that they were going to listen to the electorate. I can't find any examples of them listening to anybody, because when education is in such turmoil and people do have concerns about it, to hear of us giving money away to foreign countries is never going to be accepted as a good idea. And please try and find me one example on any social media platform of anybody who is not an SNP cult member and who can actually see past them. Anybody given this announcement plaudits. Because if anybody thinks this is a good idea, you've lost the plot. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and notification bell. And put your comments below, always like them. Most important of all, unless you're John Swinney, this SNP government who like to give our money to other people, well, our people are suffering. Not you, but
everyone else. Have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.